Tonight on Sky News at 11, Fabio keeps his job. The Football Association says he's the best man for England. CAPELLO says it's time for a new team. Also tonight, a British man married to a suspected Russian spy says he had his doubts about her. 4 people are arrested after a teenager is stabbed to death as he arrives at school. Plus...
Medic! Get medic!
Dramatic footage shows the bravery of British troops as a comrade is hit by Taliban gunfire. Paris Hilton arrested for drug possession after attending a World Cup game in South Africa. And in sport, it's all over for another year. Andy Murray beaten in 3 straight sets at Wimbledon. Also this hour, we'll be reviewing the morning papers with political commentator Mark Seddon and the Observer features writer Elizabeth Day.
Live from the Sky News Centre, this is Sky News with Jayne Secker.
Good evening, this is Sky News at 11. Fabio CAPELLO is staying on as England football manager despite the team's terrible performance in the World Cup. The Football Association said the Italian was still the best man for the job, claiming the humiliation in South Africa would prove to be a good experience for future tournaments. As for CAPELLO, he says it's now time to introduce new players and what he called new energy to England. Sky's Ian Doveston reports. Now, it all seemed so promising. The sun was shining, Federer was out, but it wasn't enough. And it's all over for another year for Andy Murray at Wimbledon. The British #1 failed to reach. Those are just a few of the front pages. Stay with Sky News for our full review of Saturday's papers at 10:30 this evening. Also, check out our website, skynews.com, to find... Welcome back. This is Sky News at 10. Dramatic footage has been released showing the moment a British soldier was shot in the face by Taliban fighters in Afghanistan. Lance Corporal Adam Smith from the 1st Battalion Mercian Regiment was on foot patrol in Helmand province when insurgents launched an ambush. Sky's Mike McCarthy has the story. Mark will be back again for the full press preview at 11:30. Also joining us then will be the Observer feature writer Elizabeth Day, so do stay with us for that. Now, 8 members of a drugs gang have been sentenced to a combined total of nearly 80 years in prison. At times, the traffickers were moving up to half a tonne of cocaine, worth around £150 million on the street. Sky's Lisa Dowd reports. A British man who was married to a suspected Russian spy says he had suspicions about her behaviour during their 4-year marriage. Alex Chapman said his ex-wife's personality changed dramatically and that he wasn't surprised to find that she was one of 11 people arrested in the US. Sky's Enda Brady reports. 4 people have been arrested after a teenager was stabbed to death as he arrived at school. A group of youths are reported to have been waiting to ambush 15-year-old Zach Ulumegbon close to the premises in South London. Sky's Jane Dougal reports. Mexico is still suffering from the effects of Hurricane Alex, with heavy rain bringing the city of Monterrey to a standstill. 6 people have died as a result of the flooding that also swept away cars and triggered mudslides. More than a year's worth of rain fell in 3 days from the Category 2 storm, leaving tens of thousands of homes without water and electricity. Dramatic footage has been released showing the moment a British soldier was shot in the face by Taliban fighters in Afghanistan. Lance Corporal Adam Smith from the 1st Battalion Mercian Regiment was on foot patrol in Helmand province when insurgents launched an ambush. Sky's Mike McCarthy has the story. An in-depth look at the major stories making tomorrow's headlines in our press preview at 11:30. Well, I'll be joined by the political commentator Mark Seddon and the Observer's features writer Elizabeth Day. This is Sky News on our website, skynews.com. Hello, you're watching the press preview on Sky News. Time now to take a look at some of the best stories in tomorrow's newspapers. And joining me this evening is the political commentator Mark Seddon and the Observer features writer Elizabeth Day. Lovely to see you both. Now, before we go through your choices, let's have a look at what is on the front pages of those papers. Analysed a lot and fought a lot to get this. Do you think it could well prove to be a battle that just wasn't worth fighting?
Well, it's really difficult to say. I mean, there was a story earlier today on the news about how David Cameron, part of the reason he was able to persuade his party to back him in going into the coalition was because he said, you know, we've got to offer them this referendum because Labour are just offering to sort of swing it through. And it's emerged that wasn't the whole truth. And so, as Mark was saying, I think this whole story demonstrates that the coalition is on incredibly shaky ground. And it is rather a shame, because I would like to see voting reform, and I think there's a huge appetite in the country for voting reform.
But do you think there is? I mean, I know we talked about it a lot during the election campaign, but I wonder how many of the voters really care, or really sort of, when it comes down to it, will actually understand what the difference between the first past the post and AV actually is.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will just imagine that a system where you can get a 36% of the vote, as the Tories did this last election, and not be voted in and not have a majority, and 36% of the vote, as Labour did the last time they were elected, and sail through, it just makes a nonsense of the system. So I think in that respect, in the very broad brush way, there is that appetite for change.
Yeah, I agree with Liz. I think that, I think the system became so visibly unfair.
Get kicked to the side. And this is one thing which, unfortunately, because sterling has lost about a quarter of its value against the dollar, means that it's much easier for American companies to stealthily come in and take us over. And I think Mark is absolutely right that it means a lot in terms of sort of national confidence, really, and national self-esteem. And also the fact that Kraft took over Cadbury's means that we've got worse chocolate, because they make Hershey's, which is rubbish.
Maybe the Swiss could take us over, and we'll all have lovelier chocolate. Yeah. Also on the front page of The Independent, and on many of the front pages across the board, pictures of Andy Murray, head in hands. It says, oh, well, let's just enjoy the summer now. We haven't had a lot of luck, have we, in the sport?
No, it's so depressing. Andy Murray now turns into a Scotsman again, and we all disown him. He got beaten in straight sets. But I don't think there's that much more he could have done. I mean, I listened to Tim Henman and John McEnroe giving their commentary after the game, and Tim Henman's advice to him was simply to get better, which is easier said than done. But at this stage, I think he was just outplayed by Nadal, sadly. And yeah, no British in the final. But one slightly funny thing, Laura Robson, the last year's junior Wimbledon champion, had a bit of a strop on court and threw her racket and started shouting. And her mother was watching, and she shouted out, "Grow up, Laura," which is just the kind of thing we need, really, for our sportsmen and women.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, back to Andy Murray, and in the interview that we showed afterwards, the pre-match interview, he showed a bit of emotion, which we haven't really seen very much of from him. Do you think this is something we need from him, that we all need to warm to him perhaps a little more, and that perhaps he needs to show a bit more of his emotional side? Maybe it might improve his game. I don't know.
It's a tricky one, isn't it? Because I mean, as a woman, I like people to show their emotion, but then on the court, people like Federer and Nadal are very controlled, very calm, and very self-confident. And I think it's that sort of dynamism that you need. So maybe no emotion on court, but some emotion off, which is impossible.
Yeah, well, sorry. I mean, I watched the sort of emotionless English World Cup team and felt